All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott talking JavaScript, courtesy of Murox JavaScript, second edition. We're about to go into Chapter 4 in Section 1. I finished now Chapter 3, and I don't want to save it. So we're up to Chapter 4, how to work with JavaScript objects, functions, and events. Okay? So, let's go start on it here, and we'll see what we've got. Okay. Given the specs for a JavaScript app that requires only the skills you've learned thus far, code, test, and debug a JavaScript application. That seems to be pretty much, we have that in just about every chapter. All right. Given the name of one of the methods or properties that are presented in this chapter for window document, text box, number, and date string objects, describe the use of the method or property. Describe the way number, string, and date objects are created. Describe the use of the first child and node value properties for working with a DOM. And once we go through that, if you have questions and concerns, again, don't be that concerned because the next chapter, Chapter 5, is all on the DOM, or the document object model. Describe the creation of both function expressions and function declarations. Distinguish between local and global variables. Describe the use of strict mode in JavaScript. Describe the creation and use of event handlers, including an event handler for the load event of the window object. All right. They mention here, I guess I'm on page 109. The author talks about there being another method of the window object to display a dialog box, and that's the confirm. So let's take a quick look at the confirm. Again, I'm not sure why we'd want to use it in the program we just looked at, but let's just open up that grade array HTML and that, well, let's say open. And let's grab the grade array JS also. All right. And we'll say confirm, did you like our array program? All right, we're just going to put that in there like that. Kind of a silly, contrived example, but just so you do see it. Let's save. We'll go back to our HTML file. We'll run the program again as we just did. All right, we have to put in our numbers, so all right, do you like our array program? Okay, and cancel. Okay, so the confirm is just basically another dialog that if we want to, we can bring up. Okay, now continuing on here in our foray into Chapter 4, no pun intended, we've talked now about parseInt and parseFloat. Again, what they attempt to do is to take whatever value you put typically in a prompt, but it could be anything, and convert it from a string to a number. All right? I should mention the window object is the global object, and JavaScript lets you omit the name. That's why we could, instead of saying window.confirm, we can just say confirm. But you can say window.confirm, but it's considered, doing that is considered to be kind of superfluous. The document object lets you work with a document object model. That you have to put document in front of. So like document.write. Data in a text box is treated as a string. So everything that we did in the prompt box is considered a string. Before you can use it as a calculation for a parseInt or a parseFloat, you need to convert it to numeric data. If you try to convert it to numeric data and it's either empty or there are no numbers in it, what gets returned is capital N, lowercase a, capital N, which means not a number. Again, that's what is returned by parseInt and parseFloat when the value being parsed isn't a number. All right. here are some examples of working with both those. I think we've looked at these already. Now, as we start to convert or make our way over to talking about the DOM, this get element by ID becomes more and more important. We've talked about this just a little bit. All right. We've talked about this just a little bit, but just so you know, with the get element by ID, the reason that that's important is anything in your HTML that you have put an ID on, you can use the JavaScript get element by ID. And basically it's used to get the object for the HTML element. And what you can do with that then is almost limitless. So what I'm telling you is virtually anything that you put into your JavaScript program that you associate an ID with, you will be able to manipulate either programmatically, all right, with JavaScript and or with CSS. All right, we've looked at right line already, so here's some examples. So this assumes that you've got like a text box or something that's called rate, or you've given it an ID called rate. So that grabs whatever that was, that whole object, and it copies it into something called rate box. Okay. We just finished talking about these. All right, couple members of the text box object. First one there is focus, and you notice the parens afterwards, which means that's a method or that's a routine that gets called with a text box object. If you say text with the name of a text box dot focus, what that means is, imagine that you've got a form that you've written. We're going to talk a little bit more about forms, and we spend a lot of time talking about forms in the 157 class. But if you want to make sure that when you start running your application that there's one field in the form and that the cursor is resting on, you give it the name of that text box dot focus. Okay, so that's what it does. That's what the focus does. It moves the cursor into the text box, but it doesn't return anything. There's a couple properties that are here. One is value, and that's the string that or the contents of the text box. There's disabled. And if you disable something, if you disable a text box, then you can't write in it. All right. They also mentioned toFixed here, and I've actually shown you that before, where I tried to get, when I was working with an average or whatever, and I wanted it to 2 decimal places, I used the toFixed method. So when you use the get element by ID to get a text box, the method returns a text box object. Then you can use its value property to get the value that's in the text box. When you assign a numeric value to a variable, a number object gets created. Then you can use the number methods with that variable. And they start to show you some of that. Okay. There they will. I guess it's coming up. Now, notice they talk about chaining here. When you chain something, you typically say this dot this dot this. But what you're doing is you're chaining properties to objects. So if you look at the example that we have right there, the with chaining, it's got document dot get element by ID dot value. All right, you're using one variable for that, and you're doing it in one line. Then up above, they do the same thing, but they do it as 2 lines. All right. Well, if you are running an application that's time sensitive, you want to write as little bit of code as you can. And really, what's in there in the first one is always, always, always going to go slower than what's in the second one there, because the second one is 1 line of code. They put it over 2 lines, but this is 1 line of code. This is 2 lines of code, so it's going to take longer. All right, so here's some examples, again, without chaining and with chaining, just so you see it. These are all things that we're going to be doing more and more of as we go on. All right. So they start talking in here about objects, period, and how you create an object. typically, not always, but typically when you create a new object, you use what's called the new method. All right, so take a look at that example. var today equals new date. So today now becomes a date object. It should hold the month, the year, the day, the hour, the minute, and the second. All right, it's an object because it's complex and it holds a bunch of different values. So you can see in there, if you look at the example, that's how we would create it. The date method allows you to do a lot of different things. Again, this is shown in the book here on page 113. You can grab any piece of the date you want. You can format the date into many different ways. And there are several different date methods that you can use. Some of the methods of the date object, notice there, to date string, returns a string with a formatted date. Get full year gets the 4-digit year, so this would return 2016. Get date returns the day of the month from the date. Get month returns the month number. Now, unfortunately, when you do that, you've got to be very careful when you use get month, because January's return is a 0 and December is an 11, so you typically want to add 1 to it. All right. The length property returns the number of characters in a string. The string object has a bunch of stuff that's associated with it. It's really sad because for some reason, and I used to mention this all the time, and boy, I still wish this website was out there, but to my knowledge, what I'm about to show you is not out there anymore. But there was such a fantastic website out there. I'm going to try to show it to you right now. It's called hunlock.com. But now when you go out there, you get that message. You get that error message. And it had so much in there. So if I go out and say, for example, I'm going to type in here, JavaScript arrays. All right. Now, I may or may not have mentioned this to you before. I don't really know. But I'm going to give you a couple really good resources. Okay. The W3schools.com has got an excellent tutorial out here, Learn JavaScript. All right. You're going to actually get more information in that than you have in your book. All right, so that's out here. Stretch this out a bit and make my font bigger so you can see what's going on. So w3schools.com/js, which is kind of a standard abbreviation for JavaScript, /default.asp. That's just an excellent site. Now, are there other ones? Well, of course there's other sites. All right. And I'm going to come out here just so you see it. And I'm going to go to one of the sites that I like the most, especially with Hunlock not being available. And that is the Mozilla Developer Network. So, I'll show you that one. And that's right here. Okay. Now I'm going to make this a little smaller. But if you look at that, https://developer.mozilla.org/en-us/docs/web/javascript/reference. So if I grab everything up to global objects, so if I grab all that and I paste that into an empty browser window, that should bring me to the Mozilla Developer Network JavaScript reference. This is about as extensive as you're going to find on the internet. All right? So there are lots of places that you can go out there to get information. If I say something and you think either I'm wrong, I don't try to misspeak, but I do, that I said something wrong or did something wrong or whatever. Now, with what we just looked at just a second ago, all right, we've got for this, where was it? Here, reference global objects array. Well, again, if I come back to this to the reference here, And I think this is a search window. And I'm going to put in here string functions. All right. And it's going to come back and it's going to show me, it says function prototype to string, function type, etc., string prototype. Well, that's not really very well done. So let's type in JavaScript string functions, and it'll probably push me out to W3 schools. And you can see it does. Here's string on Microsoft Developer Network. That's more what I was looking for. All right. So notice over on the side here, those are all different methods that you can call that are related to strings. All right. So developer.mozilla.org will get you started. A lot of examples in here. Some of them just make sense. Notice the length, because we kind of looked at something with that before, and it says length is 12. And that's GRACE space HOPPER. There's 12 characters in there. I used the 2 uppercase before for you to put something into uppercase, so you've seen that. Much of the work that's going to be done with string objects are going to be done with what are called substrings, which is a string within a string. So let's say that I wanted to go through the Declaration of Independence, and somebody told me that this isn't true, but let's say somebody told me that, well, that was written in old King's English, and the word thou is in there all sorts of times. Well, I could go and search for the word thou, which would be a substring, all right, in the Declaration of Independence, and that's what I would be searching for, or through. Okay, and you could say, well, what about thou? You could have thousand or something like that. No, I could just search for a word that starts with THOU. All right, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. All right, so they've got a little bit of stuff in here, and let's go from here to here. Okay, what they're saying is if you go in and you create, if you go in and you create a web page that looks like this, I'm not going to create this one, but if you do it, what do we have? Well, we've got a doc type, but our actual HTML really starts here. And it ends down here. And in between that HTML and that HTML, we've got a head, we've got a body. All right? So there's our HTML that's got a head and it's got a body. Within our head, we've got a title, and that title has text in it. So within our head, we've got a title, which has text in it. And if we look in our body, we've got an H1 tag, we've got a form tag. That's really what's right in there. That's the direct descendants. So an HTML, or H1 tag rather, and a form tag. That H1 tag just has text in it, so you see that. The form tag has what? It has a label, an input, a span, a label, and an input. A label, an input, a span, a label, and an input. The labels have text, and so does the span. So when you go in and you create a web page, what gets done for you behind the scenes, for lack of better words, is something like this gets built. And it's called the Document Object Model. All right. And boy, if you can become a master of the Document Object Model, there's very little in web programming that you can't do. The DOM, as it's called, is a hierarchical collection. Each of these things that you see in there are referred to as nodes, N-O-D-E-S. The DOM for a web page is built as the page is loaded by the browser. JavaScript can modify the web page in the browser. One way that it can do it is by modifying the DOM. Whenever the DOM changes, the web browser displays the results of the change. If I want to modify the text for an HTML element like that H1 or what's in the label or what's in the span, all right, there's many ways that I can do this. And we will see some of them a little later on as we go on. Again, I just want you to understand, and please, please try to realize that once we get to the next chapter, I'm not done with this one, But once we get to Chapter 5, notice how to script the DOM with JavaScript. All right, so you're going to get much more DOM stuff. All right, I'm going to go back, and what's next in here is they give us some terms. So this is all stuff you should at least start to get a familiarity with. The document object, and you've got to put document dot something for that, like document dot write. NaN for not a number. The text box object for when you create a text box. The number object for when you create, basically use a number. Method chaining when you've got this dot this dot this type of thing. Okay. Chaining is, again, separating different things with periods. The date object, which you can create. The string object, and you can create those. And finally, the document object model, or DOM. All right. Now they come in here and they start talking about functions. Let's do this. All right. This is either going to be a real good thing to do or a real not so good thing to do. But either way, it's going to be just fine. All right, so where we had our grade array right here. All right, this was in Chapter 3. So we have our Chapter 3 grade array. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file, and I'm going to save this. But rather than save this out to the JPS folder in Chapter 3, I'm going to go up and find Chapter 4, and I'm going to put a JPS folder in there. And I'm going to save the gradearray.html file, and I'm going to save the grade array file. So again, I want to save this right where I said I was going to save the other one, in Chapter 4, JPS, and I want to save the gradearray.js. Now I want to start changing this. What I want to happen here, okay, what I want to happen is I still want to take my grades array right there. All right, and I still want to have it set up, etc. And in fact, I think I'm probably better off without putting the number in there. But what I want to do is I want to fill up that grades array in one of these functions, and if you don't know what they are, you're going to in a minute. All right, and I want to do the sum in a function, and I want to do the average in a function, and I want to do the highest and the lowest in functions. I don't want to work with this length anymore. I'm going to just get rid of that for now. And now I'm going to take all 5 of these variables, and I'm going to remove them and put them at the top of my program. By doing that, now I'm going to say declare global variables, which means those variables that you see right there are available anywhere in the program. Anything in my program that I'm going to create here can use them. All right? Now I'm going to rewrite main. Ideally, in a programming language, main is what's known as a program driver. Now I'm going to assume you don't know what that means. Okay? Now think about this. Let's suppose for a minute that I'm the conductor of an orchestra. It's very rare, if ever, that the conductor of an orchestra plays an instrument. Rather, what the conductor does is she or he stands up in front and points when somebody is supposed to come in or get louder or get softer or do whatever. So their job is kind of like the job of a supervisor. I know I had a supervisor years ago, and to be honest with you, he walked around a lot. And I kind of wondered, what does he do? Then he went on vacation for 3 weeks during the school year because it was something that he had planned for years. He went to Europe. And I realized what he did, because stuff that typically got done and no one worried about, there was now no one doing it. So main shouldn't do the work. It should delegate the authority to other routines to do the work. Okay? So we're going to take all this stuff that you see here, all this, and we're going to write our own functions for it. So I'm going to call some functions here. So my main is going to now end right here. All right, so the first thing I want to do is call fill the array. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fill the array. How am I going to do that? Well, here's the function right here. So I'm going to say function fill the array. And remember where we read all that stuff in? That's what we're going to do. We're going to tell you to read all that stuff in right there. That's going to be the whole function. And it'll be done in just a minute. Don't worry about all this. We'll get it fixed in just a second. All right, so main will start. Remember, we'll call main from our button, and it'll immediately call fill the array. Fill the array will come in here, and it'll read in 10 grades. That's good. We'll have our 10 grades. All right. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to get some of array elements. So that's the next thing we're going to do. So we're going to get the sum right here. So it's a long name, but that's okay. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say function get sum of array elements, and there's my sum. Guess what? That's the whole function. All right, so what am I going to do next? Get highest. Maybe that's not the array element. That's not a great name, but again, you get the idea. Which will be followed by get lowest array element. So we're going to do both those because they're all right here. So the first one we want is get highest array element. No. Come on. Come on. I don't know what I did there. There we go. Copy. So, oops. Function get highest array element. We're going to have to add some stuff to this, but don't worry about it. It'll be fine. All right, and this is going to be next. Function get lowest array element. And we use that. All right, so now we've got these routines. We're also going to have to come in here and say, well, where we set highest in here. Let's see. Yeah, we've got highest and lowest set. That's good. So we are going to have to actually go through our array in here. So let's go through the array. That's good. There's the get highest is done now. Now the get lowest is done. So what's left? Original order, ascending order, descending order, average, and then print. But hopefully you see what we're doing here. what we're doing is, instead of having a big main that has a bunch of stuff in here, main is becoming a driver. Main is calling routines. It's calling one routine to fill the array, then another one to get that sum, then another one to get the highest element, then another one to get the lowest element. All right? And we can call get average array element. All right? Which is, I think we moved that down to here. There it is. It's just that one line. So we come in here and we say function get average array element, and we do that. Now you might say, oh, Jeff, I understand what you're doing. Why are you doing all this? Well, in a real live application, this is a pretty simple application. It's still going to be around 100 lines or so when we get done. But a real live application, I used to work when I was a programmer, a C programmer for AT&T Bell Labs. And the project that I was first involved with had about 10 million lines of code in it, of which I was responsible for about somewhere around 10,000. Okay? Now, when you start writing really, really, really complex routines, it's possible that these routines, if you've got a programming staff with 20 people, each person might have their own routine. By breaking this up the way we're doing, each person could be working on their own routine. All right? Now, what do we have left? Array, sort array ascending, followed by sort array descending, followed by, I think the only thing that was left after that was, let's just say print stats. All right, so if I've done this right, I'll have 3 more routines to write. I've got the fill array, the first one done. That's done. That should be fine. I've got the get sum. That should be done. I've got the get highest. That should be done. The get lowest. That should be done. The get average. That should be done. All right. So, function, what do we call it? Sort array ascending? Yep. So function sort array ascending. And that's everything right there. Function sort array descending. Now normally what I'd be doing here, since I'm writing some code, is I'd be testing it more than I am right now. But I'm trying to show you how to go and convert something with no functions to something with boatloads of functions. All right. And oops, so I missed a routine here. This should be called print original array. All right, so I've got to put that. That's actually the one, so this has got a wrong name. This function sort array descending actually goes here. That sort array ascending actually goes, nope, that is right. That's right. So that's the ascending. There's the descending. But where this says sort array ascending, this should be print original array. Okay. So now out of all these routines, and how long did this take me? Not very. I've got that done, 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 that done. The only thing that's left is print stats. Okay? And that's all right here. So I'm going to say function print stats. And I'm going to get rid of that confirm. I think everybody understands why I put it in there earlier. So hopefully you do at least. All right, still, I'm at right almost at exact, I am at 100 lines. All right, so let's see. Chances of me doing something this big and not making a mistake aren't great, but we'll try it anyway. So, whoops. Remember, when you do that, you've got to run the HTML file and not the JavaScript file, as I just did. Okay, so there we go. Okay, it doesn't come back, so there is something still wrong. So let's take a look. You know it's not in here. Still GradeArray.js. That's fine. It's still run program. That all came up fine. So let's take it from the top here. Grades is an empty array. Are we still calling main? Yes, we are. Okay. So grades is an empty array. Sum is just going to be a number. Average is going to be a number. Highest and lowest. And notice we're giving them both numbers that are out of range. We'll talk about other things you can do with that at a later time. Okay, so main should be calling fill the array. Well, I already see a mistake. That should be a capital T. See that? And this is case sensitive. All right. Then the next one should be called get sum of array elements. That looks okay. Get highest array element. That looks okay. Get lowest array element. That looks okay. Get AVG array element. That looks okay. Print original array. That looks okay. Sort array ascending. Well, there's sort array descending, and that's in there twice, so now there's ascending. So let's double click on that, see if it's spelled the same there. Sort array ascending, sort array descending. So sort array ascending, sort array descending, and print stats. All right. Now let's see if it looks a little better. I have no idea. There still could be mistakes. Well, that's a good start. So, 77, 66, 55, 44, 33, 22, 11, 9, 99, and 100. Notice what we're still getting. The same results as before. But we've done this now, and we've created what's called a modular program. That's what creating functions does for you. It allows you to work on it's look at it this way. When I first moved out of my parents' house, I lived with my brother. Well, after a while, he got engaged, so it didn't work out that I'd stay there. So I was talking to a guy. I worked at a food store, at a Kohl's food store in Milwaukee. And I talked to a guy who came in there. He was an older guy named Vince. And he was talking to me one day, and he said, you know, if you're looking for a place that you want, he said, I've got a little house behind my house. I call it my dollhouse. And he said, it's really small. It's got a little kitchen. It's got two other rooms. And you can use either one. One is a living room, and one as a bedroom. And then down in the basement, there was a little bathroom upstairs too. And then down in the basement, there's a shower. So why am I telling you all this? Well, I remember many times, because while I was going to school while I was doing this is when I went for my first degree, there were times when I would come home and the apartment, or the house I should say, just looked terrible. And even though it wasn't that big, I would kind of play a game with myself where I would say, okay, I'm not going to clean everything. I'm just going to clean up the kitchen. So I'd clean up the kitchen, and it would look pretty good. And I'd say, you know, now I can look out, and boy, that living room doesn't look good. So I clean the living room. Now from the living room, I can look into the bedroom, and that didn't look very good. So I can clean the bedroom. And I said, well, as long as I've done all this, I might as well go downstairs and clean up the shower area. So I have done the whole job, but it was a little bit easier for me because I took it and I created it. I had like a division of labor, or I created a bunch of small jobs out of it. And if that still confuses you, think of it this way. What if my job, what if I decide I'm going to start selling something? It doesn't matter what it is. You know, it's the old proverbial widgets. So I'm going to start selling widgets out of my car. Okay? Well, after a while, I'm doing really well. So I can't sell them out of my car anymore because I don't have enough room. So I move into my garage. I move my car out and I start making my widgets in there. But now they're really selling. It's not big enough. So I go and I rent some kind of a big warehouse. Okay? And it's actually still working out pretty well. But now my widget orders are getting up in the millions. My warehouse, all of a sudden I've got plumbing problems in the bathroom. I've got no one to answer the phone for orders. So what do? I start hiring people. All right? And I give them responsibility. I'm in charge. But I start to give people responsibility and tell them what they're supposed to do. I'm kind of like the main, and everybody I hire are kind of like the functions that I'm calling. All right? I don't know if that helps or not, so. But I just gave you an example. A function is a block of code that can be called, or sometimes it's called invoked, by other statements in the program. A function now I haven't shown it yet, but you can put stuff in those parentheses in functions, and those are called parameters. Those are things that you can pass to a function. The things you pass to a function are called parameters. When they're actually shown in the function themselves, they're typically called arguments, but sometimes both are called arguments or both are called parameters. A function can return something, but we haven't shown that yet. You can also have a function expression, and that's what we're doing here. You can treat a function in JavaScript just like a variable. So you make it do something and you take the result of it and you assign it to a variable. When you do it like that, notice the function doesn't have a name. So it's called an anonymous function. And again, there are some examples of that you'll see throughout the chapter. Okay? There are some examples. Now, what this is doing, this is kind of hard when you first look at it, but it actually makes some sense when you think about it. What we're doing in that example that you see right there where the first example that's on the page, where I've got the mouse resting, is we're creating what's called an alias. So right now, anytime you use the $, so if I say $, then in parentheses, I say my text box. It's as though I said return document.getElementID my text box. So what we're doing with that is we're creating a shortcut. We're making it much easier. So rather than having to type in, a real long thing, we use the $sign there. This $sign right here means call document.getElementById. All right? So we're just trying to make our life easier for ourselves. There's a function with no parameters that doesn't return a value. It just does something. It says today this year is, and it'll show 2016. That's it. And that's how you invoke it. Here's a function that has two parameters. So to do its thing, you need to pass in two values, one that represents a subtotal, one that represents a tax rate. So notice this is the function call right here. So we're calling it, we're passing in subtotal, and we're passing in tax rate. These are called actual parameters because that's what we're actually passing in. In the function itself, they're called formal parameters. And formal parameters don't have the same name as actual parameters, even though in this example they do. All right, so this is the syntax: function, function name, and parameters. This is what I just did for you. All right, so there's an example of how you could calculate a tax rate. What I tried to do was to take a program a fairly simple program, but one that had just one very elongated function called main. And I proceeded to take main and turn it into a driver where its job was to call all of the other routines to make it do its thing. All right? And now that I think about it, it's going to be time that we go back and we take another look at our payroll program. Maybe not this second, but we will. All right? In fact, I may already have some tapes that I've made of that payroll program. They're older. They're about a year or two old. But I'm probably going to put those out there anyway. All right. Functions, calling functions, function expressions, function declaration, parameters, passing parameters, and return statement. These are all things you've been introduced to, and we're going to learn more and more as we go on. Here is an example. Again, notice what we're saying there. Var calculate equal function. All right, that looks a little bit confusing to most people. This function, literally, and I'm going to have to, I hate double clicking on these, but I'm going to anyway. That function is right here. Now, I don't know if it'll let me make this bigger again. I'll probably lose my, yeah, I will. So let me grab it here like this. All right, copy it to the clipboard. And let's bring it in here. So what I'm telling you is, in this example, this is a function right there. Everything that you see in there is a function. What it does is you pass in two values to it. It takes those values and it multiplies one by the other, and it puts it into a new variable that it then puts to two decimal places. Now, you might look at that and go, huh? I don't have a clue as to what you're saying. All right. But the idea is, in this case, we're treating a function like it's a variable, because we're saying do something, get a value, and assign it to that variable. That's exactly what we're doing. Again, how many times have I said this already, and I will continue to beat this drum? You don't learn this without you read the book, you listen to the lectures, you read the book again, you sit down, you look at some of the code that has been provided for you by me or by Muroc. But with many people, the way you're going to learn it the best is you're going to write your own examples. All right. Anytime when you use a function, just so you know this, anytime that you use a function, anytime you write an application, and like I did in the one that we just did here, in this one, anytime that we write something, not this, but anytime we write something like this, where we declare variables that aren't inside of a function, none of these variables are declared inside of a function. That means those variables are global. That means they're known through the entire program. Everybody can use them. If I came in here and said, for example, I don't know why I do this, but like var age equal 21, then I could use age in here, but I couldn't use it in these functions unless I did what was called pass them. So I could say age right there. That's called passing a parameter to a function. All right? This whole thing is known as the scope of a variable. So the scope of a variable or function determines what code has access to it. Variables that you create inside of a function are local variables, and by default, unless you pass them around, local variables can only be referred to by code within the function. Variables that are declared outside of functions are global, which means the whole program can access them. If you forget to use the keyword global, if you forget to use the keyword var, so anytime you create a variable and you forget to use the word var, that variable automatically becomes global. This can make it hard when you're trying to debug. It's better, so what I'll try to do is, instead of what I've got done here, all right, do I really have to make all of these variables global? All right. Grades probably make sense because that's the array. But does sum really have to be global? And the answer is no. All right. Just to show you, I'm going to come here and where it says get sum of variables, I'm going to put here var sum equals get sum of array elements. Now I can take this this out of here. All right. But where I'm making this, where I'm getting the sum, now I have to say, where's the sum? There's the sum. All right, so I have to come in here and say var sum. I'm going to make a global variable. It'll have the same name. Let's just call it S so it's not confusing. So S. And this will now become S. And then I have to do what's called a return statement. So return S. And now that I'm thinking about this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of all that stuff that I just did. Why? Because let's rewrite this, for lack of better words, kind of the right way. So what I'm saying here is, come on, this worked, so why should I jack with it? All right, I am going to take this and I'm going to save it. So file, save as, and we'll call this GreatArray2.js. Okay, then I'll come back to, okay, so I've done that. And then I'll save this, the GreatArray HTML file. We'll do a save as, and we'll save that as GreatArray2.html. So this will now be 2. So that's done already. But in here, the idea is, let's see how few global variables we can have. And my guess is we can get rid of all of these. I'm going to keep the grades array global, so I don't have to worry about passing that around. But I'm going to change this to var sum equals this, var highest equals that. Just be a little anal here. Var lowest equals that. Var avg equals that. Okay? So now, if I've done that right, I don't need this anymore, so I'm just going to comment it out. All right? So I don't need those. Now, I'm making local variables in here. So either I have to grab that variable itself and actually pass it. So I could put sum in there, highest in there, lowest in there, and average in there, or I could create a local one that I'm going to use, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say here var s for sum equals 0. All right, and then s, I'm still doing the sum, but now when I get done, I have to return the sum. Okay? Then I can come in here and I'll make another var, and I'll call it h for highest, and that's going to be equal, what did we say, -1. And everywhere in here I've got a highest, I got to change it just to h. Again, I could call it the same thing. I could still call it highest. Return h. Then I'm going to come in here to lowest, and I'm going to do a var. I'm not going to call it L because when you put an L, sometimes that looks too much like a 1. So I'll call it M equals 100. All right. And everywhere now that I've got the word lowest, I've got to replace it with M. And when I'm all done, I've got to return M. All right, and here's our average. You know what? I don't even need it. I can just say this. Return and tell it to actually do the math. All right. Print original array is fine as it is. Sort ascending is fine as it is. Sort descending is fine as it is. This print stats isn't going to work now. Highest, lowest, sum, and average, I'm going to have to actually pass those in. So when I call print stats, since I've got these variables defined here, I now must pass in sum, highest, lowest, and average. So if I've done that right now, I'll just get rid of these. All right. Now I've got one global variable, not variables. I've got one global variable. All right. There's my main. I'm going to call fill the array, and then I've got 4 local variables. Then I'm going to call a bunch of other routines, and only the last routine do I have to pass the values of those 4 variables that I figured out. So let's see if it still works. Well, that's a good start. All right, well, the good news is that first one ran. The bad news is there's a problem in one of the other routines. All right, so let's start to peruse our way through those routines. So this one appeared to work fine. All right, var sum equals get sum of array elements. And that was here. Var s equals 0, for I equals 1, s equals, that's great. Oh, that should be return s. So there's a problem. Return h, return m, and that's the average. Let's see if that was the only error we had. I sure hope so. All right, 77, 66, 55, 44, 33, 22, 11, 0, 99, 100. All right, still have a problem. Not good. All right. So this gives me a good chance to show you another way to debug. All right. The problem has got to be in one of these routines. So I'm going to comment out all these routines and then comment them back in one at a time. All right. So I want to see if the problem is in my sum routine, which is right here. So I'm going to put here an alert that says sum equals plus s. So that's going to give me the sum of all those array elements. So I can see if there's an error in my code, but I want to see where it is. So I'm going to run this. The numbers they put in here are really pretty much irrelevant. All right, sum is 736. So I know that the error is not in my sum routine. That's a good start. All right. So now what I do is I come down to the next routine and I comment that out. That's highest. So I got to call get highest array element. So I want to look at that. All right, and there's get highest. H equal -1. Grades, H grades. That looks like it should be okay. But before I return it, I'm going to alert. Alert, highest value is plus highest, plus H. So, and in fact, sometimes what I even do is I'll take these alerts that are in here, just leave them there and comment them out. That way, if I add something later and something goes wrong, I can always go back and look at it. So highest value is. So let's see how that works. I want to see if my highest routine works. So run the program. 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99, 6. Highest value is 99. So that works. So I know. As I'm perusing my way through here, I know that that routine works. Okay? So now I can go to my lowest routine and I can uncomment that one. And where I said this right here, alert highest value is. What I'm going to do for right now is I'm going to comment that out. But I want to do a similar thing down here and print out the value of lowest. And I'm going to say M right there. Okay, M grades, M grades. And just so you know, because I've actually missed a thing or two in here that now that I look, this should say var before that right there, and it should say var right here, and it should say var right here. That's just good programming practice. Again, I'm creating variables, so they should have var in front of them. All right. All right, so that should fix all those, hopefully. All right, so now I know the problem's not in fill array. I know it's not in sum. I know it's not in highest. Now I'm checking to see whether or not it could be in lowest. $77, $88, $99, $66, $55, $44, $33, $22, $11, and $56. So 11 should be the smallest, and it is. Okay, so I know now the problem's not in my lowest routine. All right, you can see what I'm doing. I'm very deliberately working my way down here. All right, so now I want to come and try to print out the original array. Okay, so we'll see if that works. Again, as I run this, the numbers I put in here are basically irrelevant. And it said the lowest value is because I didn't comment that one out. And it's not printing out those values. So that might be where my error is. All right, so first, let me go where I've got lowest value is, and I want to comment this out. Where is that? Highest value, lowest value. All right, so there. All right. What about the average? Did we do the average? I don't remember. So let me do the average. All right, let me do that. All right, because I'm not sure if we did the average, so the error could be in there. Return sum. Ah, that is the problem. I need the sum and I don't have it. So I put in here sum, which means that I have to pass in the, that would be sum. That might have been what the error was all along, but it's okay. I love being able to show you what's going on here. Hopefully you're learning something from this. All right, Chrome, not there. 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99, 100. All right, it's still not showing unless I didn't put that in there. Did I forget to add? I bet you I did. So I want to grab that alert where we got the lowest value. I want to grab this alert right here. And rather than return this, I'm going to come in here and change this a little bit. I'm going to say var avg equals, so that's the average, equals that. All right, then I want to print out the average, so I'm going to put an alert in there. Then I will return the average. Okay, so I want to say here average value, avg. Okay, all right, so let's check that. Now I'm going to make this easy on myself. I'm going to go 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. Then I'm going to go 50, 50, 50, 50, 50. So my average should be a 75. And it's not printing out anything. Well, that says there must be some kind of a problem in my average routine. bar average equals sum. Well, it would probably help if I print out average, wouldn't it? Again, let's just do it this way. 90, 90, 90, 90. Oops, not that. Student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, student 5, student 6, student 7, student 8, student 9, student 10. Average is 85, so that's okay. All that to find out I didn't have any problem in that routine. Okay, so now I can just return this because I know that it's correct. All right, so that'll work just fine. I don't need the alert, and I don't need the return statement there. But I will comment this out. All right. And now I want to call print original array. So now I want to see if I can print the original array. Well, there's no comment that I can write there, but I'm just going to see if I can print it. All right, so there's print original array. So let's run this. I think I've already fixed my error. I think it was what I showed you before. So, all right, so here we go. All right, there's the array in original order. So that looks okay. Okay, so we've got that. Now I can grab my array in ascending order and uncomment that. All right. There's the array in original order. Why am I showing that? I'm not showing my next one. I'm not showing right now the sort ascending order. Either something's wrong or whatever because it's not printing. So we go down to sort ascending order. There it is. There's a document right there. Sort ascending, sort array ascending, sort array ascending, but sort array ascending, sort, two S's there. I got ascending right there. Okay, don't know why, but I did. So let's do it again. So there it is in original order and now in ascending order. You can see that it works. All right, what's left? Ascending or descending order, and then our stats. Okay? Again, I believe now that the program is going to work just fine. I think it's because before I wasn't passing in the sum, and I think that's what the problem was. That's okay. So there it is in original order, ascending order, and descending order. Again, it appears to be working. And finally, we'll go and we'll uncomment our print stats. Okay, and run it one more time. All right, well, the only thing that I'm not seeing are my actual stats, so why not? Did I not comment that line out? Nope, that's commented out. Print stats, sum, highest, lowest, and average. Sum, there. Highest, there. Lowest, there. AVG, there. All right, print stats. Did I spell it right down here? Yes, I did. So why isn't this right? Oh, because I have to pass them in here too. All right, so I passed them in up here, okay. Sum, highest, lowest, and average. But down here, I've got to also pass them in. And just to show you that I don't need to use the same names, I'll call them S, H, L, and A. So this will become H. This will become S. This will become L. And I said before, I really don't like to do that because it looks too much like a 1. And this will become A. Just to show you that these are what are called the formal parameters, so you can call them whatever you want. These up here, when you actually pass them in, are called the actual parameters, so you've got to give them those names. All right, let's run this one last time, and hopefully we can put the program to rest. Well, that isn't a good start, is it? S, that should be H. Let's make this M like we did before. M. Ah, there's the problem. There's no comma there. S, H, M. So we're passing them in what? S is the sum. So let's just do it in the same order we're passing them in. So there's the sum, then the highest, then the lowest, then the average. All right, so hopefully now S, yeah, look, it looks like it should be okay. Oopsie, not very good. Come on, I'm not, for some reason my enter key is locking. All right, so highest grade is correct at 99, lowest grade is correct at 11. My sum is not showing right now. Oh, it's up here. See that? The sum is way up here. So I like the sum and the average to be down together at the bottom. So I'm going to fix that, and then we're finished. Thank goodness. All right. So let's just fix that. We'll run it one last time, and we should be done with this then. Got our highest and lowest are correct. Our sum is correct, I think, and the average. Okay. So what I attempted to show you in there was when and how to use local and global variables and how to pass things around. So that's on 120 and 121. All right. Let me check my time. See, I've run this program way too many times in here. Oh golly, I'm way over. So I'm going to stop here, and then we have a part 2 in just a couple minutes.